Hey everybody, I'm Tom Waddell. I'm here with another lesson for you guys. And this week we're going to take the same composition that we did last week and paint it again. This time using new colors. I hope you stay tuned. I hope you enjoyed this painting, and let's get started. So I'm here to sort of show you some very basic techniques in very basic compositions. I'm really not going to go off and start painting these elaborate paintings so that people might look at them and then all of a sudden that fear factor may come. And these compositions are going to remain fairly simple, at least in the beginning. But you'll be able to do these, and I hope you try them. It's really a lot of fun. And listen, if anything, it's a way for you to get away from your kids for a little bit. You know what I'm talking about? You just kind of, you know what I'm saying? You know? Okay. So what I want to do is I want to take this scene right here, and although it's simple and it's basic and there's really not a lot going on there, it doesn't mean it can't be creative. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the same scene, but I'm going to do it with a totally different color palette. I mean, I'm not going to make, blue grass or, it'll make sense, but it'll seem like a different time of day, maybe a different time of year. And we're just going to kind of, I have the idea in mind. I know what colors I'm looking at mixing, but this is sort of a work in progress. So we'll see how it goes, and hopefully we'll have some fun doing it. So I'm going to put that right down here, and I'm going to grab my palette. We're going to get started right up here. In order to allow the paint to slide easily on the canvas and allow for you to make a gradient with the darker part of the sky up top and a lighter part of the sky down toward the horizon, due to what we spoke about last time, a little bit of atmosphere, what we like to do is first put a mixture of what I use. It's a Gamblin product called solvent-free gel. And what this does is this allows me to mix with my titanium white up here to make a very thin paint for me to just kind of rub right up on here on the canvas, and then my color will go on over top of it and mix with the white, and I can now control the value of that color as I work down. So that's what I'm going to do. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to tap in a little bit of this Gamblin. Hopefully, can we see this right here? It's just a gel. It's kind of difficult to see, but I guarantee you it's there. And I'm going to take just a little bit of white, and this is just a 2-inch brush. I'm going to make this nice and thin, about 50-50. And similar to last week, I'm really only going to put this paint where I believe my sky is going to be. And if you want to use that reference photo, or make it your own, do whatever you want to do. You don't need to follow what I'm doing. These are just techniques. So I know that I'm going to do a similar scene. So I know that my edges are going to remain dry, and I'm going to carry my sky pretty far. My horizon line is going to be pretty far down. So I'm just going to start right here. Start laying in a little bit, and you can put this on you can put this on really with anything, paper towels, sponges. I'm just using a 2-inch brush because it's large, and it covers a lot of ground very quickly. So that's what I'm going to do right here, just up in the middle of my area right in here. I'm going to let it extend. Like I said, my horizon is going to be pretty low again. I'm probably going to have that land kind of creep up in here again, like I did the last time. I kind of like the way that look, and I want it to look the same. I don't really want to deviate too much from the original composition, so we'll just rub that right onto the canvas, and that's about all you need. Very thin and very even, very important. You really don't want to be able to see, like, you'll be able to see, it's difficult because it's pure white, but you can, if you see there's no paint there, you don't, a good rule of thumb is you touch it, if you can see your fingerprint, you're doing pretty well. So that's what I'm looking for, very thin and even. Now that I've done that, today what we're going to do, let me run through my colors. That'll probably help you guys out a little bit. So in this week's painting, the paints that I'm going to use are, I'm going to use a titanium white right here. I'm going to use a Prussian, or you can use Phthalo Blue if you prefer, if you have it, whatever you got. This is a Dyke Brown. This is Sap Green. This is a Cadmium Yellow. This is a Yellow Ochre. And this is a bright red, or it's actually mostly a color that's called Naphthol Red. Or you can use a alizarin crimson here if you want. It depends on what you have. I know a lot of people who have supplies may have alizarin crimson. That will work here too. The values are slightly different, but they'll mix. We're going to be mixing them and making some pink and lavender colors with it. So those are the colors that we're using. Again, limited palette. I think there's only 7 colors here. And before I begin, very important, make sure when you use that Gamsol, I keep calling it Gamsol, that solvent-free gel, when you're done with it, make sure you get rid of it. You don't want that on your palette because you don't want your paints to get too thin too quick. Like I said last week, one of the tricks in being successful in this sort of painting is limiting the amount of paint that you put up on the canvas and keeping them as dry as you can. Now, you might just say, yeah, but you put a real thin paint on and that's true, and you put that in the sky, and that helps you blend the sky. But anything after that, there are techniques that we'll show you in this lesson, we showed you last week, to try to keep the canvas a little drier. It'll help you put additional layers of paint where the paint will actually leave your brush and go onto the canvas rather than the paint coming off of the canvas and onto your brush. And that's one of the biggest mysteries in this type of painting. People seem to struggle with that the most, having paint come off the canvas onto the brush rather than the other way around. So the trick is try to keep your paints dry, very firm and thin. Only you want to limit the amount of paint that you're putting on these canvases. So here's what we're going to do. In that new painting, we're going to do the same scene. I'm going to make a sky that is yellow. And this is I'm going to add just a little bit of yellow ochre, cadmium yellow, and yellow ochre. And I'm actually going to come up in here and I'm actually going to grab quite a bit of white. I want this to be a very bright sky. So and there's already white on the canvas, and that's okay. But I wanted this to be a very light sky. And if we don't like the value, we can always go back and we can change it. So I'm going to start up here, start at the top, where I'm going to grab just a little bit more ochre. Just a little bit more ochre. I want that to be a little, there we go. Start at the top, and again, the reason why we do this is we allow it to mix with the medium that we've already placed on the canvas, so that as you work your way down, your sky will naturally become lighter and lighter on the way down, and it gives you a feel of depth and distance and a lot of atmosphere. We'll come back, we'll start again. I'll start at the top, we'll come right back down. I'm even going to leave little areas. It doesn't have to be perfectly uniform. You want that in a sky. You want areas that are maybe a missed stroke with a brush. And it may not look right when you first do it, and you might say, oh, I gotta go, let me fill that in. And next thing you know, you're gonna have a sky that is uniform from top to bottom with no motion, no movement, and that's okay. I mean, there are skies like that, but for me, I like, always looks just a little bit more natural to me when I see skies that have a little bit of variation in the values. So I've laid my color in, and again, I just used a combination of the cad yellow and the yellow ochre and quite a bit of white. And now I'm going to go back in, and I just kind of wiped my brush off a little bit. I'm not going to be cleaning my brushes too much today. If you ever see me lean down to clean a brush, I'm usually just going to wipe it on a paper towel or just kind of beat it against this little rack that I have here. So now I'm going to come back in, and I'll start just kind of knock some paint off on my palette that I don't need. And I'm just going to come back in here now and just kind of pop a little hair off when you get them. And just very gently back and forth. Very easy sky. That's about it. And we're done. And right there you got a nice yellow sky. I'm probably going to cover up quite a bit of this, a little bit more than I did in some of the older paintings, but you'll see exactly what I mean. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put in some of those really distant bushes that we had, or trees I should say, because they're very far away. And the best way that I find to do this is, even though we've blended out the sky, I'm going to use a 1-inch brush for this, even though we've blended out that sky, we can go back in and use the same color. I'm not really going to add anything, and I'm going to just start tapping. And you can see, look how faint that is, but that's what you're looking for. You don't want a dark tree there because it's so far away. it's going to be way off into the distance. And so as you tap, you can just create a couple of really distant trees, and the more you tap, the more the brush is going to mix with the sky and with the white that's already there. And you'll see it even gets lighter as you go. And that can even give you, and if you want, come back in. I'm going to grab just a little bit more paint every time I go. Same colors, yellow ochre and cad yellow. And come back in and just do another layer. And pop that in right there. And every time you do that, the more you tap, the more it's going to be diffused. And the more distance it's going to seem. You're not going to have blotches of paint there. When you tap it, the brush is going to diffuse that color, and it's almost like it's not even there, but that's what you want. You want that to be so far away that you can barely see it. Once you do your first layer, you can come back in with a nice clean brush, and you can come in here. So you can tap these out, and again, this is just using that white original brush that I painted my sky in. It's got quite a bit more white in there, and you can see as I'm tapping it, it's bringing it just a little bit, but it's diffusing that quite a bit. And it kind of gives you, and you can even just come in here, I'm going to use this brush. You can just kind of rub that away, and the more you rub it, tap it back down, the more you work with it, the more it's going to get diffused, and the further back it's going to look. And what it does is, even more importantly, it's going to set you up for the next. I'm going to use the same red and yellow, cad yellow, yellow ochre, and this time I'm just going to take just a touch of that red in there. Not much, as you can see. I already took too much, but that's fine. We can come in here, and I'm just going to give this a little bit more color now. I'm still going to go into the white. I don't want it to be too bright, but this is going to give me another variation on that color, but still very light. And if I go in here and then come right back up to the canvas, I can start right away. Now these are going to be a little bit closer, so I can make them a little bit bigger. Don't cover up everything you got in the back, but you can come right across, and I'm just going back, picking up the same color, and then let those fade away. Very far away. And you can see the differences in color there. That's a nice, I love that color, by the way. It's better than the other one. I'm just going to define this edge just a little bit more. And now you've got the indication of several layers of trees back there. I'll take my clean-ish 2-inch brush and come back in here and then tap just the bottom. You don't want to tap on top. Although we diffuse those tops, those tree tops, you don't want to come back and come over. Every once in a while, sure, you can. Don't do all of them, because then they're going to go away real quick. But just tap right in here. Let that mix with the white that's on the canvas, just like the other row of trees. And you can just bring it out. Bring them up if you want. And this is that area. This is the area that we're trying to get that real misty look to. The more you tap, the more diffused. And when we put that layer of grass in here, I'm not going to bring it up into this harder edge. I'm going to bring the grass down and let all that brightish yellow sort of sit in the back, and then when I come back up, it's just going to push everything way back. It's going to be really nice. You'll see. Now, what are we doing? I forgot what we do. Oh, painting. That's right. Okay. So typically I'll have a highlight brush, and I'll have another one that I use for my darks. So I'm going to now go back in, and this is where we're going to start playing a little bit. I'm going to go back into my yellows and my reds. I'm going to grab a little bit more red in here. I can even just, this time, maybe just take just a little tiny touch of the blue. Not too much. And as you can see, as soon as I grab that blue, look what happens. I start getting green, right? But I don't really want green. So now you'll see they're not quite as bright as what's on that canvas. And we're going to start moving forward a little bit. So the first thing I want to do is the same painting. I keep saying the first thing. I've done like 20 things already. So we know, just as in the last painting, the light's going to be shining from this side direction and in toward us. So obviously this is the lightest part of the painting. And we're going to have trees over here blocking a lot of the sunlight in the foreground. So I really want to think about the light coming in over here. So what that means is that there are trees on this left side. They are very likely going to be lit from the back. So that's the reason why I'm going to put these highlights on first. And I'm going to just load up the brush, and I'll show you, just tap in here. Load some paint onto the brush, and then you can start picking out. We're not going to fill it up, but we're just going to start picking out every once in a while where we want some of that to live. I don't like that color, so I'm going to change it. I'm going to go back into my yellow. I'm going to go back into the red. I think that color got a little too dark, so I grabbed a new brush. Take some of the white, some of the yellow ochre. There we go. Look at that. That's nice. Look at that. I like that color much better. So I'm going to go right over top. I'm going to start on this side. This side, because the lights are going to be hitting much more, I'm going to add a little bit more on this side. And what I'm doing is I'm taking just the corner of the brush and tapping, making little areas of bushes that I think are in this tree. We can come down here, tap the brush onto the canvas, and you'll see how your bushes just sort of fall out of the brush. There's really no wrong way here, because we're going to come back with some dark later. And we're going to be adding some more trees in the foreground. Let's see if I can come over. Let me try to cover this. Well, this is a perfect illustration of how, let me show you something. How if you put something on the canvas and you don't like it, this is how easy it is for you to fix it. You can take a knife. You don't even have to use a knife. You can use a cloth. You can use, here, I'll even use, what were those towels I was using last week? Watch this. I can even take this. Just take one of these shop towels again and just come in here and just rub that away. That way when I come back with that brighter color on top, I don't have to worry about it mixing with a color that I wasn't crazy about. So that color is gone. Just like that. And that's what makes this so easy. That's why everybody should try this, because just like that. Oh, look, now it went away. You just cover it up. Never happened. A little bit more. And I really don't over mix my colors too much. As you can see, I mean, there's quite a bit going on in here. Get that one to hang down quite a bit. Maybe it comes around. We got one coming this way. Maybe this guy falls right in here. I'm gonna look at this. Let's get nuts. Let's get nuts. Let's just cover the whole top. Let's just make that whole sky go away. Let's. There we go. Looks pretty good. I think I like it. So this gives us a little indication of trees that have now come in just quite a bit, a little bit further. So what I can do is, I'll go back in, and this is where we're going to start mixing a little bit more color. I am going to now make what we did last time. We made a base color, and this was a color that we used in quite a bit of the painting. The reason why we do this is we can mix one color and then mix out values of it, starting from a very light value with a lot of the white and then moving back into the extreme darks. And by doing that, you have now a base color paint that you're going to be featuring throughout the whole painting, and it's going to give you a little bit of cohesiveness instead of mixing or taking one color out of the tube and mixing and putting it on canvas, taking another color out of a tube and putting it on the canvas. By making one base coat, you can mix that with midtones and highlights, and you can mix that color with almost anything that you're going to be putting on that canvas, and it's going to give you, it's going to tie itself together. That was only really something that I learned a little bit more recently. I was always just mixing brand new colors every time I needed a color. Oh, let me take some of this, and I found that by doing this, you got a nice cohesive, just looks a little bit better. Technical term. So I'm going to take a little bit of the Prussian Blue here. I'm going to grab, that's actually maybe a little bit too much. Let me get some of that. Let me take some of this red. I'm going to take a little bit of the Dyke Brown. If you're not using Dyke Brown, you can use umber or any dark brown. The idea is you want to mix these up and get a nice dark paint to start. Start dark. Mix these up here. And what I'm looking for when I mix these colors is I'm looking for a very dark lavender, but I want it to have a little bit of a muddiness to it. A little bit. That's why I put the brown in there to dull it down. I don't want it to be like a. And the way that you can tell if you got it, just kind of stick your finger in some white paint, and you can just rub it in here. And it's a little bit too blue for me, so I'm going to take a little bit more red. And we'll mix that into the big pile here. Now what I can do is pull it out nice and flat. And then I'm going to take some of this white right here. I'm going to start right at the bottom. And I can just start mixing, and I just like to rub it right up into the dark. And what you've done right now is you just created, this is a nice color too. Can you see that? That's nice. So it's almost exactly what I was looking for. So it gives you the same color, but it allows to drop down in value all the way to the bottom. And I can add just a little bit more white. Look at that. This is what we're going to be using throughout this painting. I'm going to be using the 1-inch brush probably for the majority of this painting, if not all of it. And now I want to start laying in, like we did last time, with some of the dark foliage that is going to find its way into these mid-ground trees, and then the more of the foreground trees. And each time we do that, we're going to start with a lighter color, and we're going to move darker and darker as we come forward, so that when you get to the foreground here, and you'll see, I'm going to block most of this in. I'm going to paint in nicely some of these foliage trees. But then once I come to the edge, you'll see I'm really just going to get the paint on, and then we can start sort of determining where those branches are going to live. So the first thing I'll do is I'll go right in here, and I'm going to take sort of this mid-tone, because this is already not too bright, so I don't want to do, I can't take this white because it'll look like a highlight on top. So when I just went right into it. So here's what we can do. Go into that mid-tone somewhere, maybe somewhere in the middle. At least that's where I'm going to go. You can go wherever you like. Try to, again, this is really, you guys make your own paintings, you know. You guys can determine which, maybe you want a little bit more contrast, and that's fine. So let's try on this side. I'm going to go right up in here, and I'm just going to start painting right in here, and I'm just going to start knocking in some of these trees that are now in shadow. And I'm just going to come in just a little bit, maybe go underneath a little bit in there. Remember, light is coming from this side, so I don't want to kill all of that, but we have to understand that we still are looking for a dark color over here. And it'll mix a little bit with that highlight that we put on. It's kind of weird with putting highlights on first, but sometimes that works. Usually when something is backlit, I like to start with the highlights first. And as you come in, you can kind of just tap in here. As you tap, just like we did over here, as you tap, not only will you transfer less paint onto the canvas as you tap lighter, but you're going to make things softer. And right there, I kind of like that. I'm going to stop there. Actually, this is a little bit of a hard line right here. I don't like that one right there. So now I'm going to do the same thing on this side. Same value. And I'm going to do the same thing on this side. Remember, the light's over here. This is all going to be in dark forest in my mind. So I'm going to start on the over here, and I'm going to work my way out. Tap lighter as you get to the edges. Let it mix. It's your brush, believe it or not, is mixing with the paint that's on the canvas. That's part of this technique. And although you do run the risk of over mixing on the canvas and creating what many people call mud, you want to manage that. You want that. That's what the technique is all about mixing paints on the canvas. And you can just pick and choose where you want. You know, maybe this one didn't make the cut. Let's do that. And you just kind of fill in. Let the light remain on the outsides, and these midtones will be just on the inside. And as you now work toward the edges, that's where I'm now going to start adding a darker color. And now I can come back in here and really add in something. You can even let some of that sky, leave that. Don't cover it all. See, it looks white in there, but that's okay. It just looks like there's more light in there. So we can come down here, cover that in there. I'm going to go back on the other side. I'm going to do the same thing. We've already started on this side. I'll just darken this up in here. And again, this tree here is different than this tree. So think about that. So one good way to do, if you really want to make a splash, have this come in here. Look how this now is able to push the other one back. So I can make this tree right here. I can come down here, bring this, maybe this just comes straight down for a little while, maybe another little thing right there. You just kind of decide where you think your branches are going to. I know it's funny when I say that, but it's really true. And just tap that in. Now that we've got pretty much our foreground trees blocked in, what I can do, let me just do one more on the edge here. Worry about these edges. In here, you kind of doesn't matter. You're really more concerned about the edges that we're going to be highlighting later. And what if I decide I want to come right down in here? And what I talked about before, I'm going to leave that beautiful, I would even just make a line. You can even sketch like this and kind of look the way you want your lay of the land to be. And you can do that just by making a line. And if that's the way you like your lay of the land to be, then that's the way you leave it. If you don't, you can change it. You could even, I would recommend staying lower than going up and working your way up, because it'll be a lot harder to take the purple off. You could do it if you wanted to, but it would be a lot harder to remove the purple after maybe you went up a little bit too high on your horizon. So I like that, so I'm going to continue. I'm just going to bring this guy across a little bit. But look how I'm leaving that nice light yellow. Leave that. That's your distance. And now that I've got that done, I'm just going to take this in here, and I'm going to start rubbing this in here. I just want to fill up the canvas at this point. I've determined where my trees are going to be. Let me just fix this guy right here. I just want to leave that piece of sky there. I like that. This guy, let's come out here. And now I can, same thing, and maybe I think the last time we did this, I took maybe some straight blue. See how blue darkens that quite a bit? Those color variations are good. You want those. You don't want everything to be one color. I think when we came over here, a good idea maybe is to grab maybe just a little bit of some of this yellow ochre and just kind of rub that up in here. Maybe grab even a little bit more, even right in here. And what I'm doing, the reason why I would do something like that is that when we do go back later on and we highlight, we can already sort of see that that's going to be a brighter spot for us. And so what we're doing is we're already laying in some depth and distance with what we'll call an underpainting. We'll go back in here, grab some more of this base color, keep this nice and dark. Again, you could really, you could grab the paint with your hand and literally smear this in this area. We're going to come back and define all of those colors with our midtones and our highlights later on. Let's come back in here. Here's another, this is going to be great. Watch this. Okay. So this area right here, you can see how there's a little bit of sky still bleeding through. So you could either leave that like that, it looks a little unfinished to me, and that's okay, or somebody might take more paint and just block that all in. But that to me looks like it's in the distance a little bit. So I can take the same brush I've been using, knock off just a little bit of excess paint, maybe start tapping up in here, and slowly but surely bring it up in here, and you can leave just a little bit of sky showing through. And now, when I come across here, it pushes it way back, and what's going to happen is, and I'll even just give you a little, just so you can see what I'm talking about. If I come in here and make this nice and dark, a nice dark edge, look how that edge makes those bushes seem so much further away. I'm still going to throw a little bit of highlight on those, but that's just an example of how you can use a dark color in front of a light color in an attempt to create distance. I'm just going to cover these up nice and dark. Let's do this guy right here. There we go. Okay. Now we've got our mid-ground, foreground, everything blocked in. I could even help the matter by coming up here. That looks very thick to me. So what I can do is take this shop towel and dab it. Tap it almost like you tapped it in with the brush. And you'll see it'll diffuse a little bit. I don't want it to diffuse too much because I still want it to remain dark. But it'll pull off just a little bit more paint than you want on the canvas. And you can actually create your own little trees and bushes that may not have been there to start. So, you know, you can take, people paint bushes and trees with sponges, you can use anything. So you can actually even come out here. You might even get nicer effects with this towel than you might with the brush. All while you're preparing the canvas for the next layer, which is the most important part. Here we go. Not bad. So now's the time where we've got our midground painted, or background's done. We've got a midground in here, and we're gonna do our grassy areas here. But before I start doing that, and this was a misstep that I took last time, I like to paint my tree trunks and all my little sticks and twigs in here. And I do that first because if I do that first, when I start throwing highlights onto these darker areas, they'll cover up some of those sticks and twigs, and they're not going to look perfect. You know, you don't want them to look perfect. Again, uniformity is the worst thing you can do. Making a tree limb here, making another tree limb, all of a sudden you're making a fence. Having all sticks going in the same direction, or all sticks and branches of the same thickness, or even color. You can vary it all up. As a matter of fact, you should be varying it up because it'll make for a much natural looking painting. If you were painting a cityscape, you might want some right angles. When you're painting the forest, you don't really find too many right angles. So what I'm going to do is take this, this is called a script liner brush. I'm going to dip it in what I use, linseed oil. If you have paint thinner, you can use that. And I'm going to go right into this purpley, it's pretty lavender. It's not as brown as I intended on mixing originally, but I love this color, so I'm going to use it. If you want it to take more of an appearance of sticks or wood or branches, you can go and just kind of wipe your liner brush into, I'm going to go just into a little bit of the Dyke Brown here directly, and then bring that back down to my pile. And you can see I'm really loading this. Every time I put my brush down, I'm dipping it into linseed oil because I want it to look like, almost like a thick ink. And you can see that this paint is a lot thinner than all of these paints, and that's what I want, because I want this to be nice and glide on. I like to twist my brush in there and make a nice point on the end of that brush. And I would say anybody who's doing this for the first time, this is where you want to start practicing, right on the edges here. So I'll do my thickest trunk right here, and I'll just right on the canvas and you can twirl it, you can wiggle it, do whatever you got to do, and then you got a tree right there. If you want, you can bring it down as far as you like. You want to make it a little thicker, just put a little more pressure and allow it to taper as you come up. I like to start from the trunk down. We'll put another little, just a little thicker in there too. I'm not going to make it too thick. And then you can start figuring out where these branches might be living in your tree. And you can come up in here and just sort of indications every once in a while. As you get to the edge, you want to have a little bit of a lighter touch. And we'll have one in here. Really, you kind of want to have like herky-jerky motions. The more herky-jerky, the better. They look more natural. You don't really want to do curves or bends, you know, sort of like, you know, like grassy areas, you know, that you're not really looking for that. You want to get more jaggedy, you know, it depends on the tree, obviously, but typically, you know, most trees don't really have too many, when you look at them, they sort of have like crooks and, you know, they're not really very smooth looking. At least when I look at trees, that's not what I see. I see herky-jerky stuff. Every once in a while, you can come out in here, put a little guy, break that. Look how nice that looks. You know, here's one of the reasons why I chose these colors, which may suit your eye and it may not. But for me, I always like the combination of a yellow, nice golden yellow with a nice dark lavender. As we know, or maybe you don't know, they're complementary colors. And they just look so good together. You know how I know? The Lakers told me so. For all you LA people. And I know you're out there. We'll start some on this side. I can even create a couple of trees, you know. I'm going back into just some of the linseed. Back up to my palette, grab. Every time you see my arm go away off the frame, all I'm doing is rolling that brush through that very liquidy paint. And we'll just make a little couple kind of sticks in here. Now these are really far back, so you kind of want to keep these as fine as you can. Oh, what I wanted to say before is how nice it looks. Not only just the color, but the contrast from that real nice light yellow. You know, when you break over some of those areas, and I'll do some over here, when you break into that sky, that contrast is just gorgeous. I mean, it looks like a silhouette. I mean, that's why we do it. Let's go here. There. You can go nuts. I think the last time I did this painting, I spent like 15 minutes doing all these little limbs and trees, and I'm going to spare you. I'm not going to do that many this time. Or maybe I'll just try to do it a little quicker. And what I can do here is just get a light, same lavender, just a little lighter tone, and I can actually come in here and just on the left side of this tree in here, very lightly come up in here and just touch, and it kind of gives you, it looks like, even though you're still way deep in the woods, it's going to look like a little bit of a highlight. I can do one on this side too. Maybe this one gets a little more light. Maybe he just goes up into nowhere and we don't know where he goes. And I can even take one that's just that lighter color, and maybe I can just put some more way back here. Maybe this just makes them look further into the distance. Same with these. Okay, I think that's enough. Okay. So I'll put my liner brush away for the moment. I'll just put that right over here. And now we can start laying in our highlights on these trees, and then we'll come in and we'll do the grass. When you load the brush, and I keep leaning off to the side because I have a little more room on that side, make sure you get a nice, you don't want the paint to be globby thick, but you also want to have enough paint on the brush, and you can see how much I'm loading on here. You want to make sure that you've got a decent amount on the brush, because without paint, you're not going to stick anything to the canvas. There we go. And I just used just a little corner of the brush. I don't use the whole brush. I don't take the brush and just stick it. I'll either use this corner or this corner, depending on the effect. Like for instance, I should be going this way because I want my foliage to break this way, and I'll show you. Let me do this guy right here. We'll do this one right here. I'm just going to, so you can see me holding the brush a little bit off to the side, and I'm not going to slide, I'm just going to tap. And I can start on the outside edge. Again, you don't want to start in the middle because I kind of want these highlights to extend over, and then I'll work my way back and create sort of a bushy pattern. And we'll do it again. Load back in. Again, I'm just going back and grabbing more color. We can do the same thing here. I kind of like that one. Let's do this one right here. We'll bring it down. Don't kill all your dark. And tap it in, and as you move back, allow it to mix a little bit. We'll come back up in here. It looks like I missed a couple of spots. We'll work down in there just like that, and see how dark. I don't know if you can see that very well, but I left that really dark in there, which is what I wanted. The next thing you do, go to the other side, and because the light seems to be hitting a little bit more on this side, I'm going to add a little bit more of the cadmium yellow, a little bit more of the green, less of this muddier reddish mixture. I just kind of want this to have a little bit. I want it to appear just a little bit. I'm going to grab just a little bit, a touch of white. There we go, look how much lighter that just got. And now I can come back right up to the canvas and do the same thing. Just tap on the outside edge and work your way back. So I'll start here. I'm just going to do a nice little highlight that goes around this branch right here. Tap and move, tap and move. And then you can start moving back. And look at that. Now you've got that light hitting over here on the outside of this branch, but then allowing the darkness to sort of take over. Come back in. Can come up in here. Maybe this slightly change color a little bit. Leave that nice and dark. Just come back over here. This one looks like it's, I'm going to take this one, I like this white. Make it nice and bright right here. Tap over it. Vary your colors. Now that I'm starting to get dark, lower, as I get lower in the painting, I will start taking up some more of those reds and those greens and allow my paint to naturally feel more like shadow. I'll even grab Maybe just a touch more of that base color. Put that down in here. And you'll see, now when I highlight this, you'll see a highlight, but it's going to still be, you know what, I'm going to leave that tree there. And I'm just going to highlight this one. Now I'm going to put my paintbrush vertically this time. And just touch and move. And it looks like it's deep into the woods right now. Not quite as bright in here. And it's going to give that illusion that there's more shadow area in there. I'm going to go to this side. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to touch this side over here. It's highlight, but it's not quite. There we go. I'm going to leave that right just like that. And I'm going to grab a little bit more of that white. I'm going to make sort of this, I don't know what color you want to call that, but whatever it is, it's pretty. I'm going to take that and I'm just going to touch these. Now remember, the light's coming from this side. So I want these to hit just, I don't think that's bright enough. So let's hit it with a little bit more. A little bit more white. I'm just going to take a little bit more white. And we'll touch them right here. Now these are, remember, these are far away. So like I said, I'm still going to highlight them, but I want them to be nice, a little bit more subdued. Just a little indication. Ooh, that was a good one right there. Look at that. And I can even take almost pure red at this point. I'll take just a little bit of this red. Tap that in and watch this. We'll just go right up in here. Little color variation. You know what? I like that so much. I'm going to do the same thing on this bush right here. Maybe I can even add just a touch of blue. I can just go up in here, just grab a little bit of the blue. And now you're going to get a little bit sort of a light lavender color. Again, all of these paints are being mixed. So I can come up in here and we'll just touch this one right here. Watch this. 1, 2, 3, just on the just on the top. Bring that right around there. And I think we're pretty good there. I like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to diffuse this a little bit more. I'm going to take this. I'm just going to bring this back up because that edge seemed a little bit too hard for me. So by tapping, well, one, I can get rid of some of those extra branches that I don't want. And I can clean up any of these areas that don't quite look right to me. If light is shining in here, I'm going to need to have some of these retain some shadow at the same time as this being lit up. So you can kind of do both at the same time. I'm going to take my, let's take the 1-inch brush. It's working so well for us already. Go back into the cad yellow. Maybe add a little more green since we're going to be doing grass. And the first layer I'm going to do is going to be right along in here. And I'm going to just see the lay of the land. It looks like I'm going to keep this kind of flat here. Kind of flat, and then I'm going to let it curl up. Maybe I'll do a little bit of an S. So I'll start maybe up here. And I'll just tap it, come down here, and then just right in there. And again, the more you tap this, the softer it'll become. And if you can vary, don't make it look like a golf course unless you're painting a golf course, in which case I would say make it look like a golf course. But vary your colors and leave areas, leave holes. And that's going to give you a look of hills and valleys and grass and whatever. Vary your color a little bit. I even got a little bit too bright for me, so I'm going to stay away from that spot. I'll come back to that later. But I'll come back over here. Now you can see I'm already thinking about bringing up and why don't we do that? So I'll take some more of the cad yellow, some more of the green, and now I'm going to take this layer right here. Maybe this is my guy. And we'll just tap that right in there. Again, a little bit brighter because I'm going to be in the sun here. We're going to come back later and we're going to add even more highlight to that. But to start, grab your yellows, a little bit of the yellow ochre, and I can come back down here and just tap, push and tap. Maybe it levels off right there. I'll take over here. What I'm concerned about is this spot over here. So I'm going to take my dirty brush, and I'm going to take some of that same green, blue, brown, whatever you want to call it. So even some of the red, it doesn't matter, and some of my base color. We'll just tap a little bit in here. Just tap, it looks like a greenish lavender. I don't know what color is in there, but that's, so I can come in here. I think that got a little bit too light for me. So what I can do is, I can come back over top. And once you come over top, look at the difference between this and that. That's what I want. That's what I'm looking for. I'm trying to darken that up. I thought that got too light for me. As a matter of fact, I'm going to go even darker. Take some more of that dark color. And I'm going to go right back over top over here. This is the beauty of oil painting. Too bright? Well, take some more paint, darken it up. It'll mix with the highlight that you've already got there. You know what? Just for, you know, what's and giggles, let me take some of this red. We don't know why it's there, but it looks good. We don't know why that got in there, but look how nice that looks. A little variation. As a matter of fact, I'm going to do some on this side. I'm not even done with this side yet, but I'm still going to put it there. This is almost just directly red on the dirty brush. We'll even add some in here. So now when I take my light brush again, and I'll go back into my greens and my yellows that are a little bit brighter, you can come right up in here, leave some of those areas alone, highlight the ones you want. There's a nice little crevasse, right? Is that a word? That's nice. Come back down here. I'll even grab just a little bit more of that red, just to give it a little different hue. Tap, tap, tap. Always making sure that you stay with the way you want your land to go. If you want it to go flat, hold your brush horizontally. If you want it to be a hill, you just ride the curve with your brush. As you're painting, twist your brush. I'll show you right here. Take the same color. I'm going to take this right here, and I'm just going to go right down. See, this is actually kind of like this. I'm going to make another S right here. So I'll take that same color, and I'm going to start here, and I'm going to come down and then straighten out again. So I'll have my brush tilted, and tap, 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 and as I come down, straighten it out. And now you got a new plane. It looks just a little bit different. I'm going to clean this up in here. I'm not really liking what I'm seeing there. So I'm going to come in here. I'm just going to tap in here a little bit more. Soften that up a little bit. Soften this one up a little bit. I can even go back into the dark if I don't like it. That got a little too bright for me again. I'm just going to take my towel. I'm going to come in here. I'm just going to wipe off some of that highlight. My God, what have I done? Come back into the dark. I'm just going to come right back up in here. Put some, maybe, you know what? I think we did this last time too. Maybe there's another bush that lives right here. Actually, maybe it even comes down a little bit. Maybe it's a little bit more in the foreground. And here we can just kind of take this right here over top. See how that dark color just kind of set that into shadow a little bit? Just add a little bit more dark. A little dark right here. Just clean up that edge a little bit. I kind of like what's going on there. I'm going to come back over on the left and go back and forth. You don't always have to stay in one spot. I'm just going to put a little indication of just a little. Let me go dark there. I don't want that to be too bright. So this is more of a mid-tone. Again, I'm mixing my greens and my reds and my yellows again with a little bit of that base color. And the reason why I'm doing that is I do want it look so flat to me. So I'm just going to come in here and just make the indication that there's some bushes in here. But look how dark they remain. Look at that. You can just let them go fade. And now it looks like all shadow. I can come back in here. This got a little too bright. All right. So now we've got this. I'm going to take care of this little bush right here, and then I'm going to lighten up this area here with a little bit of white, and I think we're going to pretty much call that one done. So let me go back in. Again, this is another area. You know what I'm going to do in this side? I like the way these purples and reds looked in here. So we'll just come across right over the top there. We'll do another one back here. And that kind of didn't satisfy me enough. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to go back into even just a little bit more white and even more of the red. I want that to be a little bit more. There we go. Look at that. Be careful when you take your white. Try not to mix much of your yellow when you're mixing in the red. Again, you'll get more of a dirtier color. And I kind of want this to be more of a, I just want this one to stand out. I think it looks nice. So now that I made that nice dark one, I'm not going to cover that. I'm just going to use this lighter one. I'm just going to use this lighter one just to tap off just a little bit. Watch, I'm not going to do the whole bush. I'm just going to do one here. And now you've got the difference between, I don't want to call it a highlight because it's so far back, but you can see a variation of really dark in there, then that mid-tone, a little bit lighter lavender, and then you got this one on top. And that's what really makes these things kind of stand out. I know I said I was going to do just a 1-inch brush, but I want to make some shadows in there. So I'm going to take a fan brush. It's a little bit smaller, a little bit more, it's a little bit easier to use. I'm going to do the same thing here. This area I think is still kind of, even though it's far away, I don't want any of the highlights to be showing in here. So I'm just going to touch up in here and create what looks like a little bit of a shadow and just tap. And again, I'm still holding the brush the way you can do this with a filbert brush. I mean, if you have other brushes, by all means, you don't have to use just a 1-inch brush. But this gives me just an indication of there's still, and I can tap in here, and I'm just tapping in here again just to diffuse. Even though it's shadow, it's still far away. And by me tapping that, I get the feeling that it's in shadow, where this ledge here is going to be the one that's lit up. I can do the same thing over here, and I can sort of kind of tap in here, go with the lay of the land, and just, you can even push up. Or, here's a nice one, I like doing this with grass. I'll take a fan brush, and instead of making a what they call a chisel edge, instead you can tap into it and you sort of break up those bristles. And I'll show you. Let me just load up the paint. So tap in vertically straight onto instead of doing a motion like this. And what you're going to do is you're going to load a brush that's all broken looking. And now you can come in here and hold it. And if you want, you can just touch and move. Lift up with the brush like this. Turn it around, and you can get little indications. I'll just do it again. Little indications of grass that maybe it's just a little bit more defined. One in here, one in here, and I think that's really all I'm going to do. Now I'm just going to take and clean it up again. Take this, clean it up again. I don't want to touch too much. I don't want it to be too defined because it's not that close. But now it looks like you got a couple of little grassy areas. I even got looks like a little bit of red in there. It looks nice. So I think we're good there. The last thing I want to do is really shine this up. Make it look like the light is really shining and just kind of making it around these areas right here. Probably just stay in this area right here. So I'm going to go back into my white. Well, that was a dirty brush. Not a problem. I'm going to do it with a 2-inch. So I'm going to take a little bit of the white, come back down in here, find a spot that's a little clean, find some other yellows that you have that are nice and bright. Here, even just a cad yellow. Man, that's going to be nice. Watch this. Cad yellow and almost pure white. Tap that into the brush. You can do this with a 1-inch brush. I just sort of ran out of brushes. You can clean yours. Tap them in, tap it in. Grab a little bit more white. I just want a little bit more paint on the brush. And now, this is a touch and go. You don't want to spend too long on this, but you're just going to grab this, tap it once, and then move. Tap it once, and then move. Load it up. Do it again. Not in the same area. Take this here. Maybe it's hitting this spot right here. And again, follow the lay of the land. Tap it, and then move. And then if you want, you can tap underneath just a little bit, and you'll be able to blend the two together quite a bit. You know, let's do this one right here. Don't do this too much because you'll lose the effect. There we go. Now that we've got that done, I'll take the other brush that I had that I said was dirty, and we can come back up in here. Oh, I like that red. I don't want to lose that red. We'll come back in here, and we can just kind of slowly just blend them together quite a bit. That's a good one right there. We'll come back into the yellows and the greens, some yellow ochre. And what I'm doing again is this, I'm just going to try to allow these edges to blend just a little bit. So I'm going to go right back in here and just touch and kind of slowly bring it up into that area where I just want it to shine. And look how soft you can get that. You can right up to the edge if you want. There's another technique. Maybe I'll show you how to do the other technique as well. Right in here. This is way too defined for me, so I'm just going to break this up a little bit. I'm going to go back into the fan brush, and so it doesn't just look like a couple of lines. I can come in here and just tap and bring it down just a little bit. Take even just a little bit more paint, a little bit more yellow, and just tap in here, and just so that way it doesn't look like it's just a flat line. Give it a little bit more definition. More white. I can even put a little bit of red in there. And this will just allow you to work it down just a little bit. And it's all about blending it back and forth. And it doesn't have to hit all the way. Touch it here, touch in here. See how I'm making it go away a little bit? Maybe I don't want it to go. Maybe it even kind of cuts down in here. Maybe there's another little bright spot right there. Come back. Back in here. And I think we're good. Just work it down. You look at the light and you decide where you think. Maybe the light does bleed all the way in here. But that was the other technique on trying to get bright spots. Instead of just using a 2-inch brush, you can go in and figure out how to get that fan brush in there as well. And with that, maybe we'll just touch this. It's a little too dark in there too. There we go. That didn't look right to me. Come back in. You can just stick with the fan brush if you want, and just every once in a while come back and just give the indication of some grassy areas in there. Again, this is a little bit more in the foreground, just like over here. Maybe I'll come in with a little bit more detail up in here. But what I'm doing here is to get that grassy look. I take the fan brush. Now I'm holding it horizontally, and I'll hit the canvas and I'll just give it a push. And what happens is it leaves those little tiny, we can even do one right here, nice and dark. It just gives you that indication of little pieces of grass. We'll go back in the reds and that lavender, and I'll do the same thing right in here. I think we're all set. I'm going to stop here. I hope that whoever is going to watch this, whoever's watching this, I hope you guys try this out for yourself. I'll maybe do another video. We'll do something a little bit different next time. Maybe we'll try to do some distant mountain or something like that. Nothing too difficult. Like I said, I want to try to keep these compositions pretty simple, only because, listen, I don't do this every day either. I mean, I just do this for the fun of it. I do what I do, and if we'll all progress. We don't need to sit and do some elaborate painting, or at least not for me to show on video, because some of those do take quite a long time. But this is an example of how you can take the same painting, more or less, and create a similar scene just with a new color palette. And you could actually do this 3 or 4 more times if you wanted to. maybe it's wintertime and you could, instead of having grass here, we could just make snow. Lose all the leaves and just have sticks and twigs and keep everything very loose and make it look like a winter scene. So you could do that as well. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will talk to you all the next time, okay? Take it easy, everybody. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you learned something. Bye-bye.